I'm Mr. Batiste, English teacher, CR North. I'll be the MC of this session. We are here with Melody Tash, okay, who is going to talk about directing talent. So throughout the presentation or the session, obviously, if you can keep your mics muted, just so we don't have any interference, that would be helpful. And obviously, if you have something to say, or you want to ask a question, during that time, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you could put it in the chat, and we'll try our best to relay that information to Melody so she can answer all of your questions. She does have a list of questions she's going to go through as well, so feel free to ask some offshoot questions regarding those. All right, Melody, it's all yours.
Hello, how are you guys? As Benjamin said, I'm Melody Tash. I run Cinema Quilt, which is a production company in Philadelphia. And I started in this business as an actor. I studied theater at Temple University. And then after that, I worked with a nonprofit company and eventually found my way into film. So I've kind of experienced directing from both being the talent and being directed to directing others, both for theater and for film. And so today I want to just talk a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the joys of directing talent for both narrative films and for documentary films as well. And I'll also touch a bit on what are some of the things the changes that are happening now with the restrictions that we're all facing with COVID, and some of the ways that people have been getting really creative in terms of making things still happen. So as a director, one of the most important elements is to be able to create an atmosphere on set that it's almost like you're hosting a party in some respects, because you want to make your crew and your talent all feel comfortable and feel happy and that they're having a good time. They're there to work, but it's also a setting that, they want to be there. They've got to want to be there. So you want to be able to create a connection with your talent that's professional, but also authentic. So because if your talent's uncomfortable and they show up on set and they're feeling nervous and they're feeling unprepared, or they feel like they're not wanted there, or that they don't know what to do, that's going to show up in your footage. And that's going to be, it's going to be an impact on what the final film is going to look like. So while, professional actors have spent years working on their craft, and they're probably going to be able to present a fantastic character, even if they're not feeling comfortable and at ease, a beginner is going to have a much harder time. So for those of you that have your screens on, I'd be curious, for the show of hands, how many of you are interested, and you can also drop a note in the chat, are interested in narrative directing? And so you can raise your hand if narrative directing is kind of where you're at. And how many of you are interested in documentary, like non-fiction directing? Okay, so it seems like a mix of both. And of those of you that have your screens off, you can feel free to drop it in the chat as well. So I'm going to touch on both today. There are some things that are totally a crossover between the two, and others that are not. I mean, the crossover you're going to find, the biggest thing is that you want your talent to be comfortable in front of that camera, whether they're there for narrative or for documentary. Some of the things that are different, if you're doing a narrative piece, is you have time for rehearsals, or at least hopefully you have time for rehearsals. Because if you have a script and you have your actors are needing to deliver their lines, hopefully this is not the first time you're all meeting together the day that you're filming. Ideally, you'll have had a chance for them to read over the script on their own. And then you'll have gotten together for a table read, which is where basically everybody just sits around and is reading the script, which these days that would be a Zoom read, and you've probably, hopefully, had at least one or two of those. And then you can get to a point where you're on set and you're blocking it. And a blocking rehearsal is really key, because not only do you want your talent there, this is the moment where your crew is also involved. Because here's where, where theater and film differentiate. When you're directing your talent for a stage play, you're the one who's really thinking about where everybody is, and you want to make sure they hit their lighting, but that's about it. When it's film, you need to make sure that not only are you worried about lighting, but they have to hit the marks for whoever's whoever is operating that camera. If you have a bigger crew, you're going to have a first AC, second AC, someone who's going to be pulling focus. If it's a smaller crew and a smaller set, it might even be you that's directing your talent and also operating the camera and having to think about like 20 things at once. And that's where it gets really, really key to make sure that you've spent the time rehearsing so that your actors know, oh, okay, so I'm going to start here. And, if we're walking over there, that you don't lose focus. Because how many times have you watched a film where, the tech side of things looks so bad, you just turn it off. Either the sound is terrible or it's like it gets blurry for no reason. That's something that you can really avoid by making sure that you block and you have those rehearsals and you can take the time to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So one of the questions I got that I think is a great one is in terms of how do you get your actors to show emotion in a scene without micromanaging their choices that they're making. So this is really a really key one. I have to say something that like actors will talk about how they hate when directors give a line reading, meaning that like if, all right, let's say the line is, I'll see you tomorrow, right? And so say your actor says, I'll see you tomorrow. Now, a director who's inexperienced might say, no, you need to say it like this, I'll see you tomorrow, right? And as an actor, you're cringing because somebody just told you how to do your job to the T. So as a director, you want to get them to say that without actually telling them exactly how to say it. So there's a few techniques you can pull in. One is to really think about the inflection. So you can tell them, like, if you can say, hey, you're dropping your inflection at the end of the line. I need you to bring your inflection up. So that, using the word of inflection, or another one that's a really great word to use that can be a really important one would be emphasis, to remind people, hey, you're emphasizing the wrong word in this sentence. And then from beyond that would be getting into talking about emotion. So that if a character, is saying a line and you feel like it's completely off, that might be where you step aside from the actual text and say, hey, let's talk about the emotion, what's going on in the scene, and what's the character's subtext. So you can have a character who says, I'll see you tomorrow, and it could be like, a love story, or you can have a character where that they're saying, I'll see you tomorrow, and it's a threat. And it's going to be two completely different reads of how they say those lines. And that's where you could step away, and you're not even dealing with the text at this point. You could go through and have a rehearsal where you have your characters just go through and talk about what the character wants, what the character's feeling in that scene. So, this could be where you're getting really creative with your verbs. Is a character sad? Is a character, mad? Is a character, happy? You get to those basic levels, but then you can go beyond that and get really, really specific. Is a character sad? Are they, beyond sad? Are they miserable? Are they terrified that this is the last chance that they have to see this person? They're never going to see them again. Or, what are the stakes that this character has in this moment? Figuring that out and talking about that can be something where you're going to get a layer beyond just the character coming on and saying those lines. And you can get to that conversation without telling them, here's how you need to say it, but helping them to discover on their own, okay, let's go back. This is who this character really is. In the time that you have rehearsals, something that can be really helpful too would be really taking the time for them to dive into who these characters are. Maybe you've written the script, maybe somebody else has written the script, but one of the early on rehearsals could be very helpful to kind of just say, all right, what's the biography of this character? What's this character's life outside of this play, outside of this, this moment that we're seeing? Is this the type of character who is going to try to bribe their way to get what they want? Are they going to try to beg their way to get what they want? Are they going to try to flatter their way to get to the want? Depending on knowing who that type of character is really going to help your actors create a character that's really rich beyond just that moment that you're seeing. And you can do that. Somebody was asking about a question. Somebody had a question about when to use improv. So that could be a really great time is in rehearsals, is to use the improv and to have your actors improv a scene. Don't worry about this, don't worry about the script at that moment. have them improv, like, okay, they're going, if it's a movie about two best friends and whatever is happening, have them have an improv that's the day that they met. Have an improv that's a day that they got in a fight and maybe weren't friends anymore. So like have them have these scenes so that they can develop these rich backstories, and that will play on the screen in really subtle ways. Because if you don't, as a human, you have all these thoughts and this rich subtext going on at all times in your mind. When you're playing that character, you want your actor to kind of have that rich subtext and character and who they are as well. Now, if you're directing for documentary, you're not going to deal with any of that. But what you are going to deal with is wanting to have a real human interaction. And very often you'll have talent, and this goes both for narrative and documentaries. You'll have talent sometimes who aren't familiar with cameras and lights and being on screen. And so for the documentary, getting your talent comfortable and on set, feeling like they can be themselves, it's really about making a connection with them. So instead, if you're trying to get voice levels for your audio, instead of asking them to count to 10, just start a conversation like, hey, did you see the sports game yesterday? What'd you have for breakfast this morning? So they're not feeling like, oh, I'm counting to 10. That's really weird. I don't normally do that. But your audio person's be able to get their levels, and they're not answering the questions that you're going to ask. So you're not like, having them talk about something that you don't want them to talk about yet because the cameras aren't rolling, but that you can start engaging with them as a human. And that will loosen them up and help them to kind of feel like, okay, this isn't so, there's lights here, there's people, but here's this human I'm talking to. So it's really about forming that connection and letting them show through as their true selves and letting them feel comfortable, because it's, especially for people who aren't used to it, having a camera in your face and lights in your face can feel really, awkward at first. Sometimes I've been on sets where like the best questions that we've gotten will be when the talent thinks that we've stopped rolling. Like, it's like it's over, but we're still rolling, and they feel relaxed and they will speak in a way that's just perfect. I mean, I got to the point that if you're filming a documentary, I advise you, like when it's the end, don't cut immediately. Let that, and make sure your camera operator knows, don't cut immediately, because sometimes those gems, those golds will be when the person like relaxes. They're like, oh, the interview's over. Okay, now I can tell you this thing that is fantastic because I feel comfortable. And and there were so many times where when I was first producing that, we would cut the cameras and then the person would share something. We're like, well, can we take that again? That was fantastic. But really, in any situation, it's about figuring out who your actor is or who your talent is and what you can do to facilitate them feeling comfortable and giving a really good performance. Something else. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just spin off that. A question from the chat was, do you have any advice for casting or holding auditions for actors outside of your friend group?
That's a great question.
Buddies to probably be their talent.
One thing that I would say is, if I'm assuming everybody's Philly area, film.org is the Philadelphia Film Festival website and film organization website. And you can actually create an account there and for free post casting calls. Now, if it's a student production, you want to make sure that you're clear in that. You want to make sure that you're not falsely putting up your thing. So you're getting a bunch of actors who think that this is a paid project if it's not, or if there is a budget, you want to make sure that you're forward with what the budget is. But that's one spot. The other thing can be putting, if you're putting something up on whatever social media page that you are, if it's your friends, make sure that it's, it's public settings and ask them to share it within their groups. There's lots of Facebook groups that are Philadelphia area for actors and for film people. There's Philadelphia TV people, Philadelphia Film Festival people. There's Rough Cuts. If you start searching, you'll find one group and then another and another. So those are good places to kind of hang out, and you could post in those groups as well. Beyond that, I think it's really about going from your network and asking your network who their network is, and spreading it out further so that you can be in the spots where people who want to act will see what you're looking for. But I'd say film.org is a great place. And then there's, I mean, Facebook, I'm barely on it these days and I want to get off of it, but because of all the groups that are on there, that's, I've cast from there, I've crewed up from there, I've gotten jobs from there. So it is a great networking spot. A little bit, you'll see that on like LinkedIn, or there's some other, there's a bunch of different other groups. There's like Mandy.org and Staff Me Up. And there's always Craigslist, which can, that's hit or miss. I've actually, believe it or not, I actually met two really fantastic friends in the industry through Craigslist. So, but it's, it's not quite as to the same level that you're going to have when you're going from your network out. The other thing that I would say is that when you're casting is thinking about, where are you going to cast? How are you going to do the casting call? These days it's probably, I'm sorry, my virtual background is, there we go. These days it's probably going to be, Zoom or FaceTime or Skype or something like that versus getting together in person to be able to cast. So that does change things a little bit. It's not an experience that I've gone through because pretty much everything I've cast has been in person. But the thing about whatever the situation is in terms of casting, it's going to be the same of realizing as the director, you're asking people to come out and they're feeling vulnerable, them putting themselves on the line with their audition. And it's always creating a professional environment where from the start, that you're setting up a situation where they can feel comfortable, and you're setting up a situation where they can know that it's going to be professional set. So, talking about COVID, and I see this question pop up in the chat, is how do you deal with the COVID restrictions and the lockdowns, and how do you create in a safe way? This is huge. And it's something that, within the industry, there are people who are literally getting like 5, 6, 7 COVID tests a week. Then there are people who are their sets that where they have huge budgets and they're having everybody locked down for 14 days and then they start filming together. Now, most likely, most of you are not in those situations where you can have people spending the money to get the tests or having people locked down and not see their families for 14 days. That's not realistic. So what can you do? What I've seen some people do is they literally everything's over Zoom, that they record and they have, they'll do virtual backgrounds, or they will have one person record a scene just all on their own somewhere and then mesh it all together in post. Other people have had situations where, they put on face masks and they film outside instead of inside, and they just keep the crew very minimal and the cast very minimal. And they don't have any extras, and they're asking people to take on a little bit more work than they, might, where maybe you would have a gaffer and a grip and a production assistant. Maybe you're just hiring one person and you're asking them to do all of that. And if you're doing that, that's where you have to now be realistic in terms of time. You have to be realistic, okay, maybe we can't film as much as we thought we could in a day because there's 3 of us trying to make it happen instead of 15 of us. So, so it's really thinking about how can I do this in a safe way? How can I do this in a way that's going to be respectful of the cast and the crew, in a way that's going to not put stress onto people or asking above and beyond. The other thing that I've seen people do is where they will literally ask people who are in the same household to be able to do things, where people have been looking for people who are directors of photography who have kids and can film their children, or for people who are, boyfriend and girlfriend already and living together or married, and that they will be in the love scene together because they're already in the same household. So that's the kind of thing that you can think about of who do you know within your network that maybe there's a family that fits the script that you have, that they're already safe to be with each other, so you can cast them. It's a balance. It's a balance of figuring that out, because that's not always going to be the situation. And sometimes you're going to have characters who you need to cast and they don't. And it's a balance of figuring out how to do it in a safe way. one of the things that I did back this past spring is I got my pilot's license to be able to fly drones. And so I've been filming this fall, and we've been filming for a company that everything that we're filming is with the drone. So I'm like 20 feet away from the actor. They take off their masks because there's nobody near them. And the drone is like 5 feet away, and we're getting a beautiful close up of them. But I'm way, way back. So there's creative ways that you can get, you can think about, okay, if you're shooting something with a longer lens so that your crew is really far away from your talent, that's a possibility as well. And I mean, then there's the whole level as a director of like thinking about taking the time. You want the time for your takes and as many takes as you want, but then also it's a matter of, okay, we want to make sure that we're taking time to sanitize, equipment if we need to. And then thinking about, well, how, what's safe to sanitize, because some equipment you can't even use the Clorox wipes because it'll destroy the plastics. So it's a balance for sure. Were there other questions, or should I move on with the?
Yeah, there was another question in the chat about working with actors and and different, the way you want them to perform their lines. Is it something that you pull them aside to work on, or do you just correct that and direct them right on set in front of everyone?
That is a great question, and I think that again it comes down to the relationship that you have with the actor to a degree. Now, one thing I'd say in general, give praise in public and criticism in private. So, if there's this goes from all your actors to your crew to everybody, that if somebody's doing a great job and you think it's fantastic, tell everybody, tell them how, oh my gosh, that was great. That was a great take. If there's something that is not, especially if it's somebody who's maybe think they might be feeling nervous and they might not take the criticism very well, that's where you can say like, oh, let's take a break let's work on those lights. So you kind of send people off, and then you can go over and step to the side and have a conversation with that actor and say, okay, that wasn't quite what we're looking for, and talk them through it so that they're not feeling like everybody's staring at them and you're giving them notes that are hard to hear. And I think that giving notes in general can be something that it can be a tricky situation if somebody's feeling nervous and uncomfortable. So that's where it really does come back down to that relationship, and setting up, this is a safe spot for creating, we're not going to do line readings here. Here's some notes, plan for the notes, and offer them in ways that okay, maybe that pacing was off, you want to go a little slower, or you could go a little faster, or note the inflection, or note the emotion that you're looking for. The other thing to note on that is to really make sure that if you're doing another take and it's for technical reasons and it's not because the actors, like if they did a great job, make sure they know that. Because there are times on set where, we need to do another take because the camera wasn't in focus, or there was a bus going by. And this can be for both documentary and for narrative, where if the person in front of the camera doesn't know that we're doing another take because of those technical reasons, they might start getting really nervous and uncomfortable and change their performance. So it is a balance in terms of figuring out how do you make sure that they understand if they're doing it fine to keep going fine, and it's a technical thing. But if it's their performance that you need to, I would say in general, yes, it would be something where you kind of haven't come up with a reason to give them specific notes without the whole crew and the rest of the cast watching. The other thing as a director is really, you want to make sure that you're listening to other people's ideas. Other people's ideas might be terrible. They might be ideas that you're not going to use, but they might be fantastic. So you have to be flexible enough to be able to listen and take in ideas and be able to use them. If somebody offers an idea, even if it's not going to be a great idea, if you have the time, if an actor is offering a suggestion, sometimes you can avoid like a conflict or battle of saying, you know what, let's film it both ways. Let's try it. We'll try it both ways. So that so nobody has to feel like they're in the wrong. And you could get in the edit and you could realize, oh, they were right. Their way was the way we should be doing this. Or you could get in the edit and be like, yeah, that was terrible. That was awful. But by saying like, yeah, let's try it both ways and we'll see, we'll figure it out in post. That can be a situation where you save face, they save face, and you'll have more options to work with. I know that's not always the case. If you're running if you're running short on time, you can't always do that. And it might be something where you say like, look, we don't have the time to do that. We're running short. Like, let's do it this way and we'll see where we're at after that. I guess so. Okay. So is that that answer that question? I'm just reading over in chat for a moment here. The other thing I know that starting out, usually you don't have a budget. Usually, you don't have a budget at all. But what I will say, if at all possible, if you're able to have a budget of like $20 to buy a big pizza for everybody, or I guess these days in COVID, it might be like, individual like Wawa hoagies, that will go such a long way with your cast and your crew. Like if everybody's fed, they're going to be so much happier than if they're there and they're miserable and they're hungry and they're like, oh, there's nothing, if they come to set and even if there's not, they're there, they're volunteering their time. And all of a sudden you're saying, okay, hey, yep, here's the soda for everybody. And here's a meal and take 15 minutes to go eat and 15 minutes to go do whatever else you need. And we'll be back in 30, that can go a really long way on set. The other thing with that is that there's no budget, usually people are saying, yes, I'll get you a copy of the final movie. What often happens in this industry is that final scene never sees the light of day sometimes, or it does, but life gets so busy and you forget to get a copy of it to everybody. And people remember that. So if you make sure that when you do finish it, that you do get a copy of it to each actor. And, if there's anybody that worked on it that you said, yes, you'll get a copy of this, take that time to make sure that they actually get a copy of the final piece. Because I can't tell you how many times actors go to put together their reels and they'll say, oh, but I don't have that footage and I don't know how to track the person down. And they said I would gonna get a copy, but I never did. And I really would like a copy of that, but I don't even know how to track them down anymore because I don't have their number. If you do that, that's going to set you apart. That's going to set you, just a little notch ahead in this industry of like, okay, you say you're going to do it and you actually do it. That's fantastic.
Melody, you touched on it real quick about, feeding your crew and your cast. Obviously a lot of students are probably going to be using their friends or people that, are doing them favors. What tips do you have to kind of, make that process run pretty smoothly and not waste their time or ruin any friendships or contacts or anything like that?
That's key too. I mean, I think another thing is like, if you are asking your friends to help you out on your movie, then when they ask you to help out on their movie, you have to be prepared to say yes. You have to make sure that they're going to help you out and make your film great. You have to also help them out and make their film great too. So I think that's key. The other thing that's key is setting expectations and keeping to them. So, if you say you're going to film from, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m., don't keep your crew there till 5 p.m. Even if you didn't get everything you need, even if you have to end and you still are missing a whole bunch of things, the only way that you would stay is if everybody's saying, look, we can stay. We're here. We want to get this, we're all in here. But if there's anybody who's even seems like they're ready to go home, don't hold it against them. You said you were going to end at this time. You've got to end at that time. Because I think this is an issue that's within the industry that goes beyond that, is that, you'll see a mentality that you're in it because you love it. And so you'll stay for however many hours it takes to get it done, which on the one hand, that's fantastic. On the other hand, people's lives have been lost literally over that. People have come home from being on set for 17, 18 hours, so tired that they've gotten car crashes and died. Like that, it's actually a serious issue within the industry. People have lost marriages and friendships and all sorts of relationships in their personal lives because they throw so much of themselves into this craft. So I think that my hope is that for the future generations that we're going to find more of that like work balance, that like, you can love this craft, you can love it passionately, but that doesn't mean you have to be working there, staying on set for 16, 17, 18 hours, because that's not healthy and it's not really sustainable for people. So I think that setting those expectations from the beginning of like, okay, this is the time that we're going to end, that's what you keep to. And a lot of that will come to pre-production and making sure that you're actually planning to get done what can be gotten done in a reasonable amount of time. And it's hard because with COVID and because of the restrictions, you have, in some situations, you have a lot less to work with, and, you're going to have to try to get more done in less time. And maybe in those situations, it's thinking about like scaling back the story to begin with, of like, how can we make this happen without, the huge going above and beyond. Like simple is sometimes the best. Sometimes the simplest story can be the most impactful. But yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is like keeping your word, and if somebody's helping out on your project, that you help them out on their project. And if you have, I know you're all students, like you might not have any money, but if you have the money to be able to buy everybody, pizza or some hoagies or, a meal, candy bar goes a really long way with making your crew happy on set. One of the questions that I got in the notes before was, who are some good directors to look up to? And I think that's a fantastic question. And it's not necessarily even an easy question. I would say the biggest thing I would say, especially as a young director, is to watch a lot of different types of films. So that you don't just stay in one genre, that you watch films that you might hate, but you try to watch a few just to have that director. You watch films that you love, and you watch more of those directors, so that you're not stuck in one genre. I would say, watch some Wes Anderson films, watch some Quentin Tarantino, watch some Greg Wig, watch Miyazaki, watch Spike Lee, watch a wide variety. So if you love comedies, watch some thrillers and some dramas and some anime. If you love animated movies, watch, some horror movies as well. So you're really kind of seeing a wide variety of styles. And while you're doing that, like, take notes of what you like. So you could start your own director's journal that's like kind of a creative lookbook to go back to. And it could be anything from, some directors will actually create their own lookbooks where you'll take a screenshot of a movie that you like, and you're like, okay, I really like how this image looks. And that's your lookbook for when you're creating your own movie, that you're like, okay, I like these different styles and how they film this, and thinking about how are you going to do it in your own way and your own twist on it. But in addition to film directors, I would also encourage you all to spend some time looking at art, looking at artists of all different times and spaces. And I know a lot of the museums are closed right now, so you can't necessarily go in person. But even in Philly, like, there's so much art outside. Take an afternoon and go look at some of the murals. Look at some mural, find them online and do like their online tour, and then go look at it in person, and just like spend half an hour studying at one mural. Go to like along the Kelly Drive, and there's like the sculptures that are there, and just look at those sculptures, and just noticing art in different forms can make you a more impactful director, that you're seeing, not just one type, and listen to music, same thing, like listen to all different kinds of genres of music. Those are all things that kind of really can help create your vision as a director of who you are, because really you're coming down to who you are as an artist, and what do you want to say in the world, and how do you want to say it. And that goes a little bit beyond just the directing talent, but I mean, I think it's really key in becoming a good director is to really think about, who you are as an artist, and how are you going to build up other artists? Because when you are a director, you're creating a space to create art as a community. and you're collaborating together, you know, it's a team sport, you know, in that sense. And you're really figuring out how do you create that environment where everybody can feel like they're creating together.
Melody, two things. One is about a 10-minute warning till the end.
Okay.
Of the secondly, another question from the chat is, do you have any advice on, on the difference between directing physical acting versus voice actors?
That is a great question.
Narration, I guess.
Yeah, so you mean like a voiceover? Is that okay? Yeah, so voiceover. Yeah, I mean, I think that with voiceover actors, it's I've had a couple opportunities to direct talent with voiceover where we're in a recording studio, and in those situations, I'd find it's more specific sometimes. You know, sometimes it's really about listening, and it really is about having them like. I'll usually ask them just, you know, I'll give them the text ahead of time. They'll come in. I'll say, why don't we just do a take, you know, as a rehearsal? We'll be getting the levels, and that will give me a sense of where they're at with it. And then from there, sometimes it's just a matter of working with talent on watching like that their P's aren't popping, you know, with the microphone, because or in Philly, we tend to sometimes there's the street, like the S where we'll put it all together. And I even have problems saying it the way that it's supposed to, like a street. And there's also like the whistling S where it'll really sound terrible on the microphone. So sometimes it's a matter of technically asking them to be careful of those. Sometimes it's a matter of really thinking about like, okay, where's the inflection going? Or let's emphasize this word, or we need to really slow this down. So it can get very specific when it comes to voiceover acting. And also the other thing is if they're creating a character, if they're creating, you know, maybe they're doing a funny voice that's like a high-pitched little cartoon character, you know, so then you're working with them to develop who that character is. So with the physical acting, it's a lot about, there's a lot more going into it. So you have to think about eye lines. You know, you don't necessarily want your talent staring directly into the lens, right? But you don't want your actors looking all the way off here. And this goes for documentary filmmaking as well. You have to really think about your camera placement. Because if I'm talking to you here, are we having an emotional connection? Like, do you feel like I'm connected and interested in what you guys have to say? Do you care what I have to say? Versus if I'm looking, you know, just slightly off of the where the camera is, you know, like if it's a documentary piece, you want to put yourself, the questionnaire, like right next to the camera, so that when they're looking in your eyes, it's almost directly into the lens, but it's not quite. And you want to think about too, where is the camera placed? So is your actor always looking up here as they're talking? Or they're always looking down here as they're talking? You know, where's the height to the camera? And there's the the kind of like industry thing within where you'll have height differences sometimes. So you have like Tom Cruise, who if you've seen pictures of him, he's not that tall. But if you watch the movies, he looks like he's a lot taller than he is. So there's tricks of like getting apple boxes, you know, so you actually have one of the actors on a lift, so they look like they're the same height when they're on camera. So it really can be there's a lot of different things about like thinking about how you do that. The other thing too is with physical acting is, and this is even harder now with COVID, is that like if you're sitting next to somebody on screen, you can look like you're a lot further away than you actually are. So sometimes what would feel like a normal distance in real life, you'll look like you're really far apart from the actor next to you. So you will maybe need to actually like be sitting like side by side to actually look like you're at a normal distance. And then there's also, if you're directing talent and it's you know, it's more than one character, you have to think about where's that camera going to be. There's the rule of 180, that the camera always wants to stay on the one, like this is your actors. You want your camera to always stay on this side. So you don't want your camera to jump over here on this side of the circle, because that breaks the 180 rule. Now, there are times where you want to break the rules, but it's good to know that that rule is there so that you're not breaking it by accident, because it can be very jarring for your audience. All right, I saw we had one more question. I know we're kind of at the end. Oh, yes, food allergies. Yes, check for food allergies and food preferences, because you might have a friend who's vegan and you didn't know it, and you ordered them a turkey sandwich and they're feeling even worse than if you got them nothing. So definitely ask about food allergies, food preferences, all of that. Do you have any sort of separate advice when it comes to physical? Oh, that's the.
Yeah, you answered.
Yeah, I answered that. Okay. Then I think if there aren't any other questions, or if there are, I think there were. Let's see.
We've gone through all the questions in the chat. So if anyone has any additional questions for Melody, regarding directing talent or working with talent, we're starting to wrap up. So now's probably the time to ask if you are curious about anything, or anything that might help you specifically, for your films and the situations that you're going to find yourself in soon if you haven't started filming already.
And I know a question I got earlier was, is directing talent is as hard as it seems? I would say that it can be, but really what directing is about building a team. And it's about building other people up and making your team feel valued and making them feel like you care about them. And you actually do need to care about them. But it's creating an atmosphere that everybody feels comfortable and feels safe and is having fun and is be able to be creative and create something beautiful together. So it's about building that team, building people up. And the other thing too is that, if there's the saying that, like, a good leader is they're going to take responsibilities for the failures, and they're going to give away all the good things. So if your team members come up with a great idea, if your talent comes up with, praise them, praise them openly and often, and don't be afraid to say thank you many, many times, because it's about building that team and building a group of people who want to hang out and make movies together. Yes.
Liv, you have a question?
If you're for some of the documentary ones we were talking about, if you actually have an actual outfit for if a character or somebody that's in the actual film asks about if they can wear a certain thing, does everybody have to go along with that, or just that person can wear that one thing and everybody else could just go along with whatever they wanted?
For documentary? Yeah, that is a great question. So I often will get questions of what should I wear today? What should I wear on set? And I would say the biggest advice that if this is if it's a documentary piece, the biggest advice I would tell people is you don't want super tight patterns, because sometimes they look really funky. Depending on the type of camera you're filming with, it can have that moire effect where it just it looks like the outfit's jumping off the screen like that. I usually ask people to avoid logos so that you're not in a situation where you didn't, you're showing something, there wasn't a release and there's an issue with it, or, you're advertising for something that you don't believe in your movie, so I ask people to stay with it from that. And the other thing would be super jangly, big jewelry that can people tap it and the mic will pick it up, so those are the things I'll ask people to stay away from. And then I usually say, wear something you feel great in, wear something that brings out your eyes. Because the more that person feels good and comfortable, the better you're going to get that interview, and the more that you're going to get a really authentic, cool interview. But yeah, I think those are really the biggest things, unless there's something specific that, you don't want them to be wearing something. And if you're doing green screen, make sure they're not wearing green, because then you'll run into that. Or if it's blue screen, that they're not wearing that blue.
Ben has a question as well.
I actually have two. I have one more general one and then one voice acting one again. But let's start with the general one. Is there a good way to handle scheduling things? Do you want to have a rigid schedule from the beginning and then tell people this is our schedule, this is for casting if you're available, or do you want to cast first, schedule?
That is a great question. And that sometimes depends. When you're working with talent that you're not paying, you have to potentially have a little bit more flexibility. But, if these are the dates that you're going to have, sometimes that's often, if you need to have it filmed before, January 31st and you know that you only have Saturdays, well, all right, you need people that are available on Saturdays all of December. You know, if it's Zoom and people can do it at their own schedule and you're just recording people's scenes and you're going to mesh it up together later, there's a huge amount of flexibility there. So I think it can be in both, and especially when people are volunteering their time. But, ultimately, if you need to get it done by a certain day, there can't be total flexibility there. That I want to mention one other thing I forgot to mention is release forms. Have all your talent sign release forms. If it's a documentary, I usually will at the end of the interview be just like, I just want to clarify that this is okay, that we were filming this today, and that you're okay with that, and this is how it's going to be used, in addition to having them sign something. So you definitely want to make sure that you have those releases, so you're not in a situation where, you go and put it online and they're like, well, I didn't want that. I didn't know you're going to put it on YouTube. Like, we're not okay with that. So really, the more that you can clarify expectations at the beginning, and the more that you can follow those, so that you're not straying from the expectations that you set forth, the better your production is going to go. One more question you had.
I did have one more question. I'm sorry. When it comes to voice kind of directing, is it better to have the talent recording their lines like together so they can play off each other, or is it better to have them? I mean, especially like during COVID, I'm sure it's better to have them separate to a point. But more general question, is it better to have them have their lines to alone so they can come out cleaner, probably, or is it better to have them together so they can bounce off each other, kind of thing?
I mean, if you're filming it live in person, the ideal world is that you're going to have, a mic on each person, so that they're each having their own mic, and you're going to have, a boom probably there as well. And they're going to be performing the scene together, because you're going to have a different reaction and emotion, especially depending on the emotion in the scene with what they're going to be giving you. So even in COVID, if you're doing it over Zoom, maybe it's something where you say, okay, each of you are going to film, like, bring your phone, have your phone recording, or whatever you have to record. If you have, voice recorders, that's fantastic. But whatever you have them mic so that they're getting clean audio, that, like literally whatever they record on their phone's voice memo will probably be cleaner than whatever comes out over Zoom. But have them do it at the same time. And then if you're not getting it, you can always go back and do a take with one person, but you are going to get more emotion if they're acting off of each other.
Thank you very much.
ADR, any tips for ADR, especially untrained actors? I would just say that ADR is really hard, whether you have trained or untrained. So the more that you can do to set things up to be able to avoid it, the better. Sometimes that's not always possible, but it's tricky.
All right, one last question from Liv before we wrap it up.
With some cameras, when people wear glasses, about the camera and the glare of the light, and that'll mess up the film and stuff, how are they supposed to, what do you want people to do? Or like people that's in the film with glasses, how do you want them to still be able to do the film and still be able to actually see without them and the glare and all that?
That's a fantastic question. So when it comes to like documentary filmmaking, I will sometimes ask talent, like, are you comfortable if you took your glasses off? Some people will be like, oh yeah, I can. But if they're like, no, everything's super blurry to me, keep the glasses on. Sometimes just moving them down the nose a little bit where they can see through it, but they're just pushed down the nose a bit. That can help. If that's not cutting it, raise your lights up. So play with the lights. So maybe you're lighting them and the light is like right here. Try raising the lights up so you're shooting the light down on them a little bit and you have a high key. That'll sometimes cut it where the light will be hitting such that it's not there. Or it's sometimes just adjusting where the light is placed and where they're placed. So maybe the glare, instead of being like on the whole lens, is just a little bit on the side. So it's really a matter of playing with like the height of the light, where the glasses are placed, and how the talent is positioned. And sometimes you'll have to, it'll take 5-10 minutes. And you'll realize like we're still getting a glare. It's still going to be there somewhat, but doing it this way, it's only a slight glare as opposed to being to the point that it's really, really noticeable.
All right, that was, we'll call it there for right now. Get everyone a quick 5-minute screen break before our next and last session of the day. So hopefully you guys are still have a little bit of motivation for one more session.